So today we're going to show you how to change out a gear and sprocket. This is a LiftMaster garage door opener. Usually you can tell that the opener has blown out its gear or sprocket by looking at how much sag is in the chain. And as you can see here, it's sagging down pretty far, and that's a good indication. The other indication is when you try to use the opener. Nothing happens. So as you can see, the motor's running, but nothing else is happening. So that is a gear that's stripped out. So with the gear and sprocket kit, you get these items here. You get the gear and sprocket. You get the worm gear that drives the gear here. You get the grease, and you get all of these bearings and bushings. The bearings and bushings and this gear, 99% of the time, you do not have to use or replace, which makes your change out of the gear really super easy. So we're going to put these to the side. First step is to take off the cover, and we'll be back once the cover's off. Okay, so removing the cover, you want to make sure that you unplug the unit first. So now we have no power. That makes sure that you don't burn out any circuitry inside once you're messing around in there. And to get all of the screws off on the cover, you just use a 1/4 inch socket. That'll pull it right off. On this one we have 2 screws on the top on both sides, and then on the bottom we have a screw here. So the screws that come out are going to have 2 different types of threads, and this is one of the threads here. As you can see, it's very thin threads, and then the other thread, if you look here, is a much more aggressive thread. This one is always going to go from the metal to the metal, and the ones that have the bigger threads like this are always going to go into the plastic. So keep that in mind when you're putting everything back together. So now we're going to pull the cover off. And put the cover away from the back of the ladder. As you can see here, all of this white stuff is from the gear inside. So that is a shredded gear, and we'll look inside and see how that looks too. So when you look up here, you'll see all kinds of white stuff everywhere. This is all from the gear. And then when we look on the other side, we're going to see that this gear is pretty torn to pieces. So inside here, you're going to use a 5/16 to get everything taken apart, okay? So the first thing you want to do is unplug this little plug right here. This is the RPM sensor plug. And when you pull everything apart, this is going to want to hold everything from hanging down, and then you can actually end up bending these little teeth right there, and you don't want to do that because then when you put everything back together, it's not going to work properly. So we're going to take everything apart. There's 4 of these screws right here on both sides of the motor. That'll drop the motor down, and then the gear itself has 3 screws, and let's see if we can get them. There's one over on this side. There's one back here towards the back of the unit, and you can barely see it right there. It's in front of all those wires. And then on the other side, right up here next to where the capacitor is, there's one up there. So we're going to pull all this apart, and first thing to do is take those apart, but you also want to take this little gear right there off. It's pretty easy. This thing just comes right off. Just push it. And, well, this one decided to break, which happens sometimes, but they give you a new one, so it's not a big deal. And then you just pull this straight down. And what that does is it allows you, once you have dropped the motor down, to actually just pull the shaft out of this little part right there. So we're going to do all that, and we're going to continue on after that. Okay, everything is apart and we're getting ready to put stuff back together. This is the new gear and sprocket assembly right here. And what we're going to do here is put it back in the unit. Now this is the new one. I always put the grease on beforehand because it makes it a lot easier. To figure out which way this goes is there's going to be a bunch of holes right here that you're going to put the new screws through. Best way to tell which way it goes is to look right here, and right in the middle of the screen is the back bolt. And these ones are raised, so it makes it pretty easy to line up, but some of them you can turn them a little bit here and there. This one, you just line up the rectangle with the gear, with the rectangle, and that's the back hole right there. So we're going to go up. And we're going to stick this right down the way it should be. Remember to line it up like this. So now we're faced with putting the chain back on the gear. It doesn't really matter where the chain is, but the easiest way to get this thing all put back together is to make sure that the trolley assembly has everything lined up. And then from there it makes it really easy to figure out how to set your assemblies before you start running the garage door. So we're just going to leave it right there. We're going to try to get it as tight as we can and put it back together. To make this easy, I like to use some old files. And these old files have a pretty strong and sturdy but small point that we can stick in these holes to hold everything in place. So, okay. So we got the chain on. Let's make sure that the trolley assembly is pretty much in the up position where the door would be all the way up. And then that'll make it easy for us to set our limits once we do so. So we'll take one of these, put it in one hole, take the other one, put it in the other hole, and now we should be pretty lined up and we can put all of these screws back in place. So once these screws are back in place, we'll be back. Alright, so from here we have the motor mounted back up and we have the gear in place, and chain's pretty loose, but we'll deal with that later. This is about as far as the up position as you want to have the garage door at. So now what you're going to do, and try not to kill yourself by popping that off, you're going to want to take the new wheel and catch right here. What this is going to do is this is going to move the trolley back and forth for the opener. Now, 99% of the time this is down and this is up. So as you can see, the trolley assembly is almost down. So if we were to put it back together, just pop this on. The second we run it, it's going to go down. And in this case, it would move the trolley probably about to here. And then it would want to go back up when you hit the button. And it would just go up here and crush the unit. So at this point, you're going to take this little screw right here. And you're just going to go all the way until you have it to the up position. So just make sure it contacts that contact right there, and you're good. Then you can go ahead and slip these pieces on. And then when you fire up the unit, you're going to be in good shape. Make sure that you have the RPM sensor plugged back in. And all the wires tucked back up in their little spot. These just twist to hold them in place. There we go. And then make sure that this plastic piece on the end of the drive shaft hasn't been really moved, and that it actually is going between the two little terminals right here for the RPM sensor. And at this point, you're probably kind of safe to plug it back in and give it a test run and see what happens. So let's plug it in real quick. We're going to disengage the trolley. so it can run freely, and we're going to see where we're sitting at right there. Pretty rough, but that's because the chain is pretty loose, so we're going to adjust the chain before we let this thing go. But everything seems to be working good. It's going to go down pretty far. In this case, it's pretty close to the door, so we're going to want to adjust this so it moves this way a little bit. And if you can't remember which way it goes, you just look at the cover. And in this case, if you want it to go down further, you go counterclockwise. If you want to go up further, you go clockwise. So, we're going to go clockwise just a little bit after we run it. Two full turns is probably good there. Now we can put the unit back together, tighten up the chain, attach the opener to the door, and we should be good to go.